Welcome, everyone. My name is Teri Bybee, and I am the founder of Women Who Risk. And I am thrilled to be talking to Maria Tutu today as part of my Women Leader interview series to gain insights from her for her life experiences, her work experiences around joyful risk. So, Maria, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Terry, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me. And again, my name is Maria Tutu. I am a wife. I am a mother of two. I am an entrepreneur. I am an aspiring writer and speaker. But above all of that, I am just a woman who lives by faith. So my life testimony is just a testimony of faith.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm sure that we'll get to hear some of that as we get into your experiences.
Sure.
Right. So let's start at the beginning, from my perspective anyway. So, what
Okay, perfect.
inspires you to take joyful risks in your career?
It's a loaded question. So for me, definitely is knowing that we are just made for so much, that our
Mm.
capacity as a human being is so vast. And the only way for us to know what we're capable of doing is to keep taking risk, is to keep pushing the envelope.
That actually gave me chills because I think
Oh,
that is such a wonderful perspective. I think
yeah.
I have found that so many, not so much in my women leaders, honestly, but in a lot of the audiences, that we as women often struggle with feeling like enough. And what you're telling us is we are so much more than enough,
Mhm,
so much
mhm,
potential, so much out there. So
mhm.
beautiful. So are
Yeah.
there, did you have a comment?
No.
Okay.
No.
So let's talk a little more specifically. One or two specific significant risks that you've taken, and what was the experience and the breakthrough that or success that came from that?
Actually, that question is intimidating, but at the same time, it makes me smile because I've done some big things,
Mm,
uh, things that were very risky, from the point before I took the risk,
mm,
in the way that I was assessing the risk before taking it was from a fear perspective, and just going back and forth. Is this really the thing to do? Because fear, like the fear of the unknown, was just creeping in. And I was just contemplating, like, okay, you know what? The comfort of where I was and how long it took me to achieve that comfort. And now here I am, doing something that was the complete opposite of what I had worked for. And just to go into detail, in my previous life, I owned a business for 10 years, and it was a sales career and a career that was 100% commission. And I grew just as an individual in that business. It was not a business that I never thought that I would be doing at all. It was actually insurance sales and financial planning sales. But, the Lord led me to that career, and it was a big learning curve, a huge learning curve. When I got into that field, I was not married, I did not have any children. And as soon as I got into that field, then I became pregnant with my daughter. So that kind of added to the stress of a sales career. To begin with. But it was an amazing career for me. And I built that career for over 10 years from the ground up. And one day the Lord was just speaking to me that I needed to move on from this career. And it was tough. I really had to just use a lot of discernment and just listen in the more I tuned in, uh, the more I heard that this is not where I needed to be. And, I had to experience like a conflict with myself, considering the amount of work that it took me to build this career. And now finally, I was at a place where I was just cruising, which is where I wanted to be. Cruising, as far as just my income, my time management, my life work balance, my clients, I was just cruising,
Mhm.
which is all I wanted when I started to build this career, was to get to that level. And, the Lord just spoke to me, and He actually started speaking to me before the 10th year. He started speaking to me more around the seventh year in that career. And, um, it goes back to taking risk that I
Mhm.
was more than halfway into building something that I really thought that I wanted to do. So I just kept going down that rabbit hole of just comfort, being comfortable, and convincing myself this is what I wanted to do. And I kept building it and building it. And, my conviction that that was not, that I had outgrown this
Mhm.
particular season, of my life. But, the fact that it was tied to so much comfort,
Mhm.
especially financially, was a very tough thing for me to do, so it took me a year for me to actually decide, this is what I want to do. And I you would say, okay, well, I'm going to wait till December 31st. And December 31st came and went, and I just had to get a hold of myself and just take that risk and walk away. And the thing that made it very tough for me um, is at this particular, company that I had a contract with, my contract did not allow me to sell my business at all. So I mean, it was tough. I was walking away clean slate
Wow.
for everything that I built on my own. Nothing was handed to me at all. But, I thank God now that I look back um, at the point before I made this decision in
Mhm.
today, as I'm having this conversation with you, it was the greatest decision I've ever made,
Mhm.
and I'm like, Maria, you should have done it a lot sooner. But it does go back to, what I said at the beginning is that we are capable as people, and especially as women, we are extremely capable of more, and we're afraid. We have a
Mhm.
fear of living in our capacity, as crazy as it sounds. We just have that fear of tapping into truly who we are as individuals. And even we have a fear of success, as I'm learning is a thing,
Mhm.
and a fear of just truly being who you are and letting the world see you for who you are. And that really comes with taking risks, like this particular one that I took. And at that time, I thought, I talked myself out of it for about 3 years. It took me 3 years to pull the trigger. But once I pulled it, I said, Lord, my God, I need to take bigger bets on myself.
Ah, beautiful. And I do think that there's so much validity to first we have to recognize, right? We have to hear the message that that a
Sure.
change is in an opportunity for change is
Hmm.
available.
Hmm.
So you are
Uh-huh.
hearing it. And then there is that next step
Hmm.
of facing yourself, like you were talking
Hmm.
about, of,
Yeah.
okay, is this comfort worth capping where I am,
Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And then if it's not, then there's that whole divine timing of, okay, I'm hearing it. I'm working through the fear. I'm coming to recognize my own greatness, right? My capacity.
Mhm.
Am
Mhm.
I ready to, like you said, pull the trigger? There's
Mhm.
so many steps that are there. And I really truly
Therefore,
believe in divine timing. I mean, where you get the message, and I think that there's allowances made from
mhm.
God of we're going to do the right
Yeah.
thing at the right time
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think that it's recognizing that. I mean, I'm sure there are people that, and I've actually talked to a few that immediately knew, immediately took the risk, immediately saw the breakthrough. And then I think for the majority of us, it's a work in progress. There's steps
It
that we
is.
go through.
Yeah, there is. And the great thing is that God will show you the steps until you have no options, and that's what I realized, like in those 3 years. It's like, you know what, you're still not hearing me. Okay, let me be a little bit more louder and a little bit more louder until like it became uncomfortable. Like I'm like, I hate this, and that was the push for me, that I had to go through this, really working on myself, and I think it was more about my self-worth, because a lot of the times we get into situations, or we get into spaces where we're comfortable, because we then start focusing on the wrong things. I think sometimes we're not actually focusing on ourselves as individuals, but maybe we're focusing on, there's this spirit of competition sometimes will keep us in a place. And for me, I'm a very competitive person. The Lord was showing me that it is time for me to move on from the season, but I had an ego, I think, that kept me there, because I worked in a male dominated industry. The office was around 30, people that work in the office. And I think there were maybe three women over the course of the time that I worked there.
Wow.
So, it was always around guys. And I think the pride goes back to, I didn't, because it was such a tough career, and I seen so many people come and leave through this career, but I was able to maintain this career through the grace of God. And finally God was like, Maria, you have outgrown this season. And the thing that kept me there is really that competitiveness with the boys, that they told me I wasn't going to make it from the day that I got there.
Right. Right.
So it was kind of like an ego thing, like, no, but really, it was an amazing career, it was an awesome career. But when I look back, I'm just so grateful, for
Mm,
that season, that the Lord has taken me through such uh, I would say, a gruesome career.
mm,
For me, having the different things that were going around my life, having two little children, and being in this male dominated business.
right.
Um, yeah, and just really building it from the ground up, and just watching people come in and go, and still being there. And then finally, God is like, okay, it's time for you to go through a different season. There's a reason why you were here, but it's time to move on. And I think I got just a little bit of pride, from the boys that are like, oh, you're not gonna make it. And I'm like, watch this. um, but that was a big risk for me. Definitely from a financial perspective, it was a huge risk. But when I look back, it just makes me so happy, that I took that bet on myself, to start over. And looking back, I kick myself, like, why didn't I start earlier? Why did I take this risk earlier? Now seeing what I'm really capable of as a person.
Right. What would you say is the biggest breakthrough you achieved through taking that risk and changing for the new season?
Oh, perspective. Just
Mm,
having a renewed mind, letting go of the old,
Mhm.
and really walking in the new, and really being affirmed that God renews us every single day. Every single day we're renewed. For me, that was the biggest thing, is letting go, just letting go of the old, and knowing that what's ahead is so much brighter, it's so much bigger, and just being able, for me, just being able to know that, hey, you know what? At the top of every mountain is the bottom of the next. That's really has what has been my breakthrough.
Beautiful. I think that one of our greatest, even largest, even risks is looking within
Hmm.
and checking to see what growth
Hmm.
we're ready for, and or maybe even not so much ready for,
Hmm. Hmm.
but that it's time for. And then
Hmm.
it's also our greatest accomplishment, fulfillment
Yeah.
when we step into that. And it takes a when you talked about being discerning, it takes a discerning eye to look at ourselves and set that ego aside, start listening
Hmm.
to the greater voices, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I raised my hand because I was actually holding my hand up. That's funny. Um, and I don't know how to lower it. So there we go. So in any case, technology is a fun thing, but
Yes.
I think it is really a I think that every woman I've talked to has had who is a leader, that has been a mainstay of their lives, of looking at their own personal growth and how that they can personally expand, and then from that how they can then affect the world in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beautiful. So talking about what was keeping you stuck, bless you, the fears that you were talking about, how do you overcome feelings of self-doubt or fear when you are taking your risks?
So one of the ways that I overcome, just fear. So I'm a person of faith,
Mhm.
and in the Bible, there are 366 times that God says, "Do not fear,"
Mhm.
do not fear. And for me, it's one for each single day. Do not fear. And really, is fear is what really distracts us. Fear
Mhm.
is just a huge distraction. It's what disables us. So when we're thinking about, okay, risk, we have to know ourselves. And part of knowing ourselves is, okay, why do we have certain things, right? Like our childhood trauma and things like
Mhm.
that. And I feel like as women and as people, we don't understand why we have fears. Like, why are we just are fearful of certain things, and not even why are we fearful, is that we don't understand the existence of fear, period.
Mhm.
A lot of the time we're just doing things because that was our habits, that's what we've learned, that's what the culture that we've come from, but we're not realizing that a lot of it is tied, at least for me, to something that I did not recognize, which
Mhm.
was the veil of fear over my life, but never seeing it as a fear. Always explaining it as a way, explaining it as, oh, that's just what I've always done,
Right?
but really a lot of our limitations as human beings that we're so blind to, first of all, we're
Mhm.
just blind to our limitations, come from just our subconscious idea around fear. And I really believe that fear is what keeps us limited. And the worst thing about fear is that we don't know that we are walking in fear. That's just what's like keeping us limited,
Right.
encapsulated. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that from especially from the perspective of just as you were talking about kind of habits.
Hmm.
Above and beyond that, the cultural things we're taught, the societal things, and
Hmm.
I'm thinking like expectations, right?
Sure,
Where
sure, sure.
w especially, I think we're breaking through this, but where women are looked to have certain roles or
Hmm.
certain, just like you were talking about, that you fought even more fiercely, you were more competitive because you
Hmm.
were in a what was considered a men's industry.
Hmm.
So the having those things that I think are, just as you said, very subconscious,
Yeah.
these outside pressures that we're not realizing come from outside,
Mhm.
and then we start to own them, uh,
Yes.
and start to live in that pattern or
Mhm.
that restriction or that box when we are a triangle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, very, very true. I know you spoke a little bit about this, but I want to expand on it some as well. So you've taken a big risk, and I don't. How long have you been in your new season?
Um, about 3 years.
Okay, so it's pretty new, especially compared to the 10 years you spent
Yeah.
before.
Very new.
So it's and knowing that you kind of started from scratch, right? That clean slate. How how did you balance the risk taking with your responsibilities of well, work responsibilities, the new season, as well as with your personal responsibilities? How did you find that balance?
So, it goes back to community. So I am married and I have my husband. Um, and I'm not I wouldn't consider myself a total risk taker. I take very calculated risk. So before I took this risk, I sat my husband down and I said, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do, and it's gonna have such a major impact, on our lives. So my calculation here is that I have to give you a warning,
Mhm.
that you're prepared for this. So the balance would come that from really community, having my husband as support, for someone for me to just talk to, like on an emotional, intellectual, personal level, that he's there to support me, because there is that once we take a risk, there is that space now where there's an adjustment. And the adjustment is not comfortable at all. For example, one of the adjustments that I had to make is now I had a lot of time. I was used to working 60 hours a week, not all in the office, but as I'm home, I'm working, I'm talking on the phone, I'm doing emails, I was constantly working. So now having an extra 60 hours a week was a balance. It was
Mhm.
definitely, yeah, it was definitely a balance. And I had to figure out, okay, what am I doing with this time? I can't just come and bother my husband or go off on a hiatus somewhere because I have all these 60 hours. So there's really a balance there, that you have to be mentally balanced as an individual, and then also having a support around you, that also is balanced. My just because I had 60 hours now didn't mean that my husband also had 60 hours.
Right.
You know, he had to maintain his life. The kids had to maintain their life. But for me, I'm very creative, and I really don't like wasting time. So I found things to do before I even decided that I was going to quit my job. I took a part of my calculation was I went and really studied something that I was so passionate about, but I didn't have time,
Mhm.
because I was working 60 hours. So before I even quit, I had already started another business.
Beautiful. Talk about a
So
good plan.
yeah, so I do take calculated risk. But at the same time, I do believe in really taking big bets on ourselves, because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it.
Beautiful. One of the things that I often talk about is when we're talking about risk, specifically for my business, I really focus on what I call joyful risk.
Hmm.
And joyful risk is about finding it's not about jumping off cliffs,
Yeah.
right? It's not about being crazy. It's about looking at those risks that are truly aligned
Hmm.
with who we are, what
Hmm.
our desires are, what
Yeah.
in your case, what your faith is.
Hmm.
It's finding that true alignment so that you can put your your whole self
Hmm.
behind that risk.
Yeah.
So the joyful risk is really aligning to what enhances your life
Yeah.
rather than detract from it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that there's so many women are have been taught to play it small, to play
Hmm.
it what we would sometimes term safe,
Yeah.
when in reality it goes back to being in that box that you were talking about, where you're not really looking at what is serving you.
Hmm.
You're just kind of doing it,
Hmm.
whatever it is, the work, the job, the so
Yeah. We're just conforming to the world's
yes,
identity of who we should be.
right. And when, just as you said at the very beginning, we have so much more capacity.
Hmm.
We are so much more, and
Hmm.
every single individual is all these women that I've talked to, whether it's been the women leaders or women through the business, they are so skilled and they are such
Yeah.
gifts to the world.
Yeah.
And it's it's really, this is all about helping women see that they too are gifts
Hmm.
to the world, and it's recognizing it within ourselves so that we can, as I mentioned, so that we can affect the world in a positive way. And just as you were talking about, starting with our own communities, whether we're talking about our families, our
Yeah.
relationships, our broader
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
So lots, so much available when we're willing and allow ourselves to take those risks.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word alignment. Surrender and alignment have been my two words that I've leaned on for 2025. And we don't know. One of the things about alignment is we don't know exactly how it works, but as we take risk on ourselves, God is the one that aligns us. One of my favorite alignment analogies is the Canadian geese. Before I understood that analogy, like now fall, it's winter, it's cold. We see these birds, getting into formation, because they're going somewhere. And it did not dawn on me until sometimes toward the end of last year when I understood like really what alignment meant. In that alignment is in the sky every day by birds. But last year it dawned on me, like, you know what, these birds, I used to look at them and say, okay, silly birds, they're all in these shapes, they're doing all this stuff. It's really time for them to go, but they're always just in some kind of formation,
Mhm.
and what I realize is that these birds, they have to get in a particular formation, specifically a V formation, for them to strategically, unknown to me, to get to wherever they're going, to get to south. For them to get south, they have to get in this V shape. And by them getting in this V shape, they're actually organizing themselves in alignment that the strongest birds are ahead, followed by the next strongest behind them, and so on, where the weaker birds are at the end. But they're doing this now in a rotation where the birds ahead, when they get tired, they fall back. And those
Mhm.
birds right behind them are now taking the lead. And they do this rotation until they get to their destination. And the coolest thing about this whole formation is by them flying in this V, where they're all taking turns and using the wind and the strategy of aerodynamics, that every single bird in this formation gets to the destination at the very same time. And not only that, they're getting there using 75% less energy than it would take for them to fly in a different shape, like flying straight or flying in a circular shape or whatever, or even flying alone. But they're able to get there with 75% less energy and also with half of the time that it would take. So when I recognized that, I said, you know what? Those birds don't like they don't understand it, like how it works as far as the technology, or the intellect of aerospace, whatever. And just like us as humans too, like I don't understand how by me surrendering and following my heart, that all of a sudden by the law of resonance, I believe it's
Mhm.
called, that as I'm operating at a certain vibration,
Mhm.
not even knowing where people that align with me are, but because I am operating at a certain vibration, now individuals that are around me, for example, in Kansas City, in Missouri, I'm able to actually tap into them using that very law of physics. And I can't explain it to you. But it goes back to alignment. It goes
Mhm.
back to surrendering. You can tie it back to science. But for me, I walk by faith,
Mhm.
and I truly believe that God aligns us. We just have to take that risk on ourselves and hear his voice and not worry about the how and the when, because those are the things that really now distract us, and fear comes in. It's, well, how am I going to do it? When is it going to happen? So if we can remove those two things out of the equation and just do it, um, in time,
Right.
it will happen and we'll be aligned.
Absolutely. One of the mainstays of the work that I do is energy psychology, and it's actually called resonance repatterning.
Yes.
So it's very much with what you were talking about from the perspective of, and it's based on quantum physics
Yeah,
and the belief that everything is energy, everything has a
sure.
vibration,
Yeah.
has a resonance.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm doing that work, what I'm helping people do is to find that coherent alignment,
Mm-hmm.
that vibration. So it's just as you were talking about, so that it starts pulling in
Mm-hmm.
those that are at that same resonance in
Yeah.
that alignment. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it is our community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we come to know that inner vibration
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, that inner
Yeah.
alignment. And so I just love what you said about the fact that you're using like only 25%, 75% less of the energy. And it's
Yeah.
because when we start recognizing, if that synchronicity starts
Mm-hmm.
showing up, because we've done the growth, we've
Mm-hmm.
done the work,
Mm-hmm.
we've come to recognize
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're talking about, the opportunities and our capacity, and then that synchronicity begins and starts
Mm-hmm.
pulling into our lives those things that are taking us
Mm-hmm.
closer and closer to our goals. It's building again, it's touching our world because of the work we've done and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing it and um, recognizing that there is a divine place and time. And as you
Yeah.
said, you got to let some of that go
Yeah.
because what's
Yeah,
gifted
you
to
do.
you can
Mm-hmm.
be very different than what you pictured. And it could be
Mm-hmm.
so much greater when
It
we let go of
oftentimes
that.
is. It very much is. But sometimes we don't get to find out because we want to just hold on.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably, uh, it's funny because risk is inevitable and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to happen whether we choose to take this new step or
Mm-hmm.
we choose to do nothing because doing nothing is a risk as well.
Yeah, it is.
So
It is.
it's fine. And that goes back to, is this risk in alignment and is it going to enhance our lives
Mm-hmm.
or is it detracting? Just like you were saying that, you had to kind of been then hit up the side of your head there towards the end that you started hearing in 7 year and it went
Yeah.
until 10. Well,
Yeah.
and then you got to the point where you hated it.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
that was very much, right? That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much part of the signal of this is not enhancing your
Mhm.
life. So part of
Mhm.
the push, which, a lot of us require the push
Mhm.
to get us to the
Mhm.
next step. And it's not always, right? It's not always. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah. It depends on our risk tolerance as
Yeah.
individuals.
And our
Yeah.
life situations, right?
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
moment.
Hmm.
Because if you didn't have your community and
Hmm.
you were put in a situation where you had to start with a blank slate, which happens to people all the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's when you see the struggle. That's when you see the trauma reactions. That's when you
Hmm.
see those things. So I think it's worth noting that community is really important as well. We have to start with ourselves,
Hmm.
but community, that support system we create around ourselves is so important as well.
Yeah. And part of risk is asking. I think asking is the biggest risk that we miss out on, is our lack of asking, our failure of asking for help, of being vulnerable, of letting people see that we have a need. I think that is really where we just don't take risks at all. It's that asking. We haven't talked about this, but I founded a women's ministry as part of just surrendering, and letting go of stuff, because I realized that I'm not actually in control of anything. It's by God's grace that I wake up every day, but through, starting a new career, I've realized, wow, Maria, you have so much capacity. This ministry was all buried under me competing with the boys.
Ah, funny. And you said it's
But
a women's ministry too, right?
it is,
So
and it was
completely shifting your focus.
opposite. But I really needed to be in that season. When I look back, that was part of me growing. That was me being underground, being watered, um uh growing roots, strong roots. So I just loved that I had that opportunity, to be in that season, but I definitely had to get out of it one way or the other. No regrets there at all. But as part of my women's ministry is, we host a networking event every so many months called The Power of Asking, because I did realize it is the lack of asking that has really shut a lot of doors and has kept breakthrough, out of our lives, is because we are just afraid, of people seeing us and knowing that we have a need, and it goes back to, again, that ego, that just really is self-destruction, if we're not able to get out of it and just ask, which asking is a big risk, because we might get rejection that nobody
Right.
wants.
Right.
you know but rejection is not the end of the world. So I encourage women to take that risk every day, and I just remind them, like, it is through the power of asking that we have the things that we have if we don't ask for them. And I always just tie it back to my faith. God says that you do not have because you did not ask.
Mhm.
We do have to ask. If you ask, you'll be given. If you knock, the door will be answered. So that's a big risk, actually, that we don't think about at all, but just simply asking, hey, Maria, can we do the Zoom? Sure, here we are.
Well, and I think that there's a certain perspective that we are taught as women to just handle it all as well, right? So
Mhm,
much is put on us and so much we take on when
mhm,
it comes to our family, our community, our work.
mhm.
We've advanced as far as women are working now. We have
Yeah,
the choice,
yeah.
but
Mhm,
we kind of took it kind of went crazy with it from the perspective of, yes, we can do it all, and we're going to
Hmm.
without any help from anyone. So I think that that's part of that is that underlying message that women are supposed to just handle it. We're supposed to be able to do it without complaining, without and we think of asking and being vulnerable as complaining, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just kind of coming to mind as we're speaking. So absolutely agree that the risk of showing ourselves
Hmm.
as not having all the answers or not having
Hmm.
all the skills or resources or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but how much greater are we when we ask? And whether it's rejection or receiving,
Hmm.
even the rejection helps point us in a different direction,
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. Definitely.
So,
Rejection is such a huge stepping stone. But we have to be able to face that. And as you were discussing that it's an underlining thing is I'm from a different culture. And actually, the culture that I come from, we are taught not to ask, like specifically, like, how you coach your kids, like, don't talk to strangers, look both ways, those kind of life skills. One of the life skills that we were taught is you never ask for anything, even
wow.
if you needed it, because the culture that we come from, there's a stigma when you ask for
Mhm.
something. If you are asking for something, it means that you're poor. It means that you're needy. It means that you're insufficient. It means you're incapable, which are all things that nobody wants to take on as an identity.
Right.
Whether it's true or not true. So I remember my parents coaching me all the time. Don't ask for anything. If somebody offers you something, don't take it. Even if you wanted it or you needed it, because by you resisting, asking or resisting help, you actually looked more favorable, more
Mm.
capable. So a cultural perspective.
Right. Well, and talk about a huge risk and breakthrough. The
Hmm.
fact that you shifted a cultural, we'll say belief, right? Because it's
Yeah.
something you believed,
Yep.
you were
Yeah.
taught,
Yeah.
and then to then turn around and teach, realize that that wasn't serving you, and to turn around and teach that to other women, that's huge. What
I
a
just
beautiful risk.
I just came into realization with that right now. It wasn't, I didn't start this power of asking because of my culture, but now I see it.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, what do you think women of the world need to hear right now about taking risks?
I think that all you have is the opportunity to take risk. Sometimes I wonder, just to myself, like how many things have I missed out on?
Mm.
How many rooms have I walked into with something that I really wanted to ask, that I really wanted to know, someone that I really wanted to have a conversation with, but something told me not to do it, and just as I've grown, the fear of insecurity, or fear of rejection, fear of whatever. Um, how many doors have been permanently closed in my life that I will never know where those doors are going to lead to until I get to heaven and see what was behind that door, because in this life, many of those doors have been closed. So, one of the things that propels me is opportunities. Like I am very open to opportunities. Actually, one of the things that keeps me going is that you never know when you will ever get that same opportunity that you have right now ever again.
Mhm.
And there's a fear actually that pushes me now, is that if I don't take that opportunity right now, not even just for me, maybe for that person, that God is telling me to talk to. He's telling me to call, invite them to church, go to coffee with them, whatever. If I don't do it, what if me and that individual, that was going to be the very last opportunity between me and them?
Mm,
And I have no clue what it means as in my natural eyes, what that means. So to give you a story, I there was a time that I regret, like among the things that I regret. Um, I it was like in the winter, probably a day like today. I was going to the grocery store and I park my car right in front of the grocery store, and I see somebody coming out of that store. Somebody that I know, not know very well, but somebody that I know, they're on the quieter side. And I sat there and I saw them and I'm like, okay, something was telling me, get out of your car and go talk to this person. And then there was the fear of rejection. Like, Maria, this person's not going to talk to you. They hardly talk
mm,
to you. Just let them be. Like, why do you want to bother them? Kind of thing.
mm,
So I sat in my car. I let them get in their car. Then they drove off and I got in my car and did my thing. Um, and I believe like a few months later, not that many months later, maybe 2, 3 months later, that person passed away. Um, and that and I still have this vision of me seeing them right in front of my car,
mm,
and I just like, so that is one of the things that I regret.
mm,
Even though I didn't know this person like to a level that was impactful, but I did know this person, over the course of years. I've seen them, conversations here and there. Um, so anyways, maybe I would have gone out and talked to them and then still passed away, whatever. But like that time, like now I have a fear,
mm.
that if God tells me to do something, I'm gonna do it.
Right. I mean,
Because
really.
it's not even about me.
Mm,
Like it's not about me at all. And I was thinking that situation was about me, like me bothering this person. But they actually ended up passing from, it was a young lady. She ended up passing from a very tragic uh loss, and sometimes I feel like if I would have talked to her, would she would have told me about it? Could it could have been different, so those things like that. But I think just sometimes you only have one opportunity to
right.
do something, and that is the only opportunity you're gonna have. And unless you want to be like me, having regrets,
Mm,
you better just do
right.
it.
And what I recognized in the story that you shared, part of that is probably our greatest gifts from our risks are the
Mhm,
connections made,
mhm.
right? Because rarely are these risks we're talking about just us. Because if they were
Yeah.
just us, they probably wouldn't be scary at all,
No.
right? So whether it's new jobs, new people, new situations, there's almost always, I'm going to guess 99% of the time, somebody on
Mhm,
the other end.
mhm,
And so that's really the risk you take by not taking risks is missing out on connections that just as you're wondering, could it have made a difference?
mhm,
We don't know. But the fact
mhm,
that you didn't talk to them
mhm,
set up that internal dialogue of, oh, what could have happened,
mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to give you the opposite of that story, because now I have like the fear, I just do stuff. I was at church and I said this late next to this lady, and another young lady, she pastor asked, like, do we have any new people today? She rose her hand and I went and talked to her, because now I have this fear. So then I talked to her, I invited her over to my house. I'm like, hey, we're doing this Friendsgiving. Why don't you come? Tony, she comes, and it's a house full of people, and she made really good connections with people that go to that church that she had never talked to.
Beautiful.
So then she sends me a message and she said, Maria, did you know that I've been praying
Mm.
that God will introduce me to people because I'm from another state. I've been here only for a couple of years. I don't have any connections. I don't have any real friends. And this has been like a prayer for me. And
Mm.
the fact that you walked up to me that day has made a difference in my life.
That brought a tear to my eye. So moving.
Yeah, and I just then I had to like humble myself, and I had to pray and I said, Lord, thank you that, her and I might not even never be friends. Um, but the fact that you stirred me up to go talk to her, to invite her over, because the whole time she was here, I didn't even talk to her. I opened the door for her. I said, you're so brave coming to a stranger's house by yourself, you
Mm.
know? And she literally just got in, made friends, and has like three friends that now she sits next to every single Sunday.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And last week I just looked at them and I just started praying. I said, God, thank you. They used me as a vessel. Because it took me talking to her for her to sit next to three people that were always there.
Mhm. Beautiful. Beautiful. One more question.
Okay.
So, what vision is pulling you forward to your next joyful risk?
So the vision that is pulling me forward to my next joyful risk is actually another story. um, so earlier I said, that I realized we just have so much capacity and we have that fear, of being who we truly are and letting the world see us in a totally different light than where we've been. So what's pulling me forward is actually the Bible story of the widow and the oil. That is really what is pulling me forward because I'm actually building an entire business off of that little story that I'm going to be launching in 2026.
Oh, how exciting. I feel like the
Very
these
exciting.
feel like this community can now support you in that desire, that next joyful risk, just by being aware.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. 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 Once I have it all legalized, I will announce it. But it's just a story about risk. It's about a widow who her sons, were about to go into slavery because her husband died, and that was just the custom of those times. If you had debt, your children were bondsmen per se, and she just had a life of crisis, and through God, she went from crisis to calling.
mm,
And she was able to build a generational business from something that was a complete crisis. And she was at the end of her life as a mother. Your husband's gone. You have no real skills to take care of yourself. And oh, yeah, by the way, your kids are going to slavery.
mm,
So that's what's gonna keep me forward. And there's a question in there where God asked her, He said, what do you have in the house? And she said, nothing, which often we say as women, we say we have nothing. And then she said, oh, wait a minute. I actually have a little pot of olive oil. In that little pot of olive oil, which is the thing that she knows how to do so well, but because she knows how to do it so well, she bypassed it as
mm.
nothing. And that little thing turned out to be like I said, a business that maintained multiple generations. So, anyways, that's a
Well,
snippet of my business.
I'm excited for you. That's wonderful. Well, I
Thank
will
you. Thank
bring,
you.
you're so welcome. And I will bring this to the close, just again, sharing my deep appreciation and honor that you were willing to take the risk and say yes and come and join me, someone you didn't know, in doing this endeavor and
Mhm.
bringing your words of wisdom and your stories forward so that more women can realize that they're not alone and connect to those words that you shared and believe in themselves more, believe in their greater capacity
Yeah.
and their capabilities. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.